I'm going to speak to you briefly about how film can save lives. For most of us, contemplating childbirth is a moment of great joy, an ultimate life experience. However, still today, in many parts of the world, every pregnancy comes with a serious threat of death. Fiona Laird, a midwife colleague and friend, was in Darfur, and she came back and told us stories of her stay. She'd watched babies deliver, in the main attended by unskilled birth attendants. The cord was bashed with a rock, the ends of the severed cord sealed with cow dung. The consequences, as you can imagine, were devastating. Babies died of tetanus and mothers hemorrhaged. When she returned, our reaction to her experiences produced a short film, which I'm going to show you a clip of. The problem is that most women in these situations have no chance of any access to skilled healthcare in labour. In Somalia, there are 0.1 nurses per 1,000 of population. In Burkina Faso, 0.6 nurses and midwives per 1,000 of population. In the UK, there are 8.8. That's one nurse in Somalia for 10,000 people. Film democratizes access to life-saving information. Through film, we're able to reach people in the remotest areas of the world directly. Film can communicate on a completely unique level. It can be made their own. It transcends boundaries of language, of culture. It is adaptable and is unique in its ability to communicate. My name is Natalie Greenwold. I work as an obstetrician in a high-risk clinic at University College Hospital in London. What that means in the UK is that the patients that I see have got complex medical disorders that might lead to a preterm delivery. In the event that mother and baby deliver preterm, they will have access to the best quality care and have one of the best chances in the world of both survival and good quality survival. However, in many parts of the world, this is still very much not the case. In 2013, the WHO estimated that 289,000 women died in pregnancy. That's 3 times Wembley Stadium in just 1 year. 99% of these deaths occurred in the developing world, and 85% of those were in rural areas. The problem is of access. In the 1990s, the United Nations resolved that this lack of skill, this lack of attendance to women at a critical moment, was a human crisis, that basically it should be a human right to have care in childbirth. They organized a series of conferences, and as a result, the Millennium Development Goals were compiled. MDGs 4 and 5 made a promise that by the year 2000, the maternal mortality rates would be halved. And by 2015, halved again. It's now 2014, and the rates have improved in a number of countries. However, they remain stubbornly high in many places. How can we simply stand by? Women just like you and me. In Zambia, the lifetime risk of maternal death, that is to say, the chance that a 15-year-old will die of a pregnancy-related condition at some point in her lifetime, is 1 in 59. In the UK, it's 1 in 6,900. So we get an idea of the scale of this problem. Fiona, my midwife colleague who was in Darfur, she had to watch babies die of hypothermia. As mothers were attended, people rushed to the mother's aid. They would try and stabilize her. They'd try and make sure she was okay. Meanwhile, a newborn baby, perfectly healthy, had been dropped whilst they took care of the mum. As they went back to the child, the baby had died of hypothermia. Why? Simply because it was wet and it had got cold. And it was as easy as that. Fiona worked tirelessly during the 9 months that she was there to teach clean cutting of the cord, basic hand washing, to try and share the preventative measures that were simple and so impactful. However, as she left, she worried about what would happen. How would things continue after she left? What was the legacy to her trip? She offered to teach before she left, and 1,000 people turned up for her training. A couple of years later, Professor Eric Jonio, my co-founder of Medical Aid Films, and I went to Burkina Faso. We went to Ouagadougou, to the teaching hospital there, with a couple of surgeons who had been traveling to Africa for about 10 years on surgical training trips, a week at a time. Professor Michael Stark is well known in my field and had perfected a technique for operating in these circumstances. The whole cesarean could be done with only 3 sutures. And he used a minimum of cutting so that the blood loss was reduced to an absolute minimum, which is critical when you've got no access to blood transfusion. We filmed the whole operation. I had a GoPro camera on my head, and he had a mic, and the whole thing was interactive. 40 doctors in the room next door. And we spoke as we were operating. They asked questions. We filmed the whole training session. After we left, the film was left behind. Film creates legacy. It can preserve best practice and then be used by the trainers to train again. In 2010, we traveled to Rwanda. We went to the rural outpost. We wanted to understand and really get a clearer understanding of what women faced in the rural parts of Rwanda. And we went to a clinic in a place called Mareba, and were greeted by Philippe, a wonderful nurse. He had to do everything from care of the elderly to delivering babies to care of the newborn. He was inspiring in his courage and dedication. He timidly brought out a box of implements and he said to me, "Could I ask you, I've been given these by a visiting team, but I don't really know what to do with them." As we opened the box of gleaming instruments, I pulled out a set of Keelan's forceps. In the United Kingdom, Keelan's forceps are used for high rotation in an obstructed birth. They are actually a very difficult instrument to use, and they confer great risk. They would only be used by the most experienced obstetricians. I said to him, "Don't ever use this. You can do much more harm than good." We went through the box, and actually the only useful thing was a urinary catheter. I explained to him that in emptying the bladder in the last stage of labour, it would create more space for the descending head and could ease delivery. He then took me to see a haematology lab that had been built next door, again by a visiting team, and said to me that really 6 months after the lab was no longer in use because there had been no consumables, no education around how to use haematology in the context of what he was doing. We thought, well, how much more powerful would these gifts be if they were delivered with educational materials? Materials in the form of film that would help to contextualize and give management algorithms as to how all this equipment could be used. And so the light bulb moment was in 2006 in the academic offices of UCL when Eric and I suddenly felt gripped by the fact that film offered us a unique opportunity to get directly to the problem itself. Out in the rural areas where we knew that the majority of women were dying because they had no information and because they couldn't get to any skilled health workers, and also because of the power of film to communicate in a way that was unique, not didactic, not very obviously about a different society that had nothing to do with them and their problems. And also, it was a method of teaching that could be left behind and could empower people to then train others. So we looked at the main causes of maternal death and we set about trying to address them one by one. Putting together storyboards, gathering expertise, making sure that we were culturally and resource appropriate. Collaboration is at the heart of how we work. We recognize that by working with partners who are already on the ground and leveraging their activities, we can achieve massive scale. Here is an example of a very sustainable method of showing all sorts of educational and internet-based information. It's a recycled computer placed in an old oil drum powered by solar energy. This is UNICEF's project. Our films have been loaded on to these computers and have enabled many people to watch them. In Shitambo, which is a village in Zambia, we worked in a hospital that serves a population of 100,000 people. There was an existing outreach program that worked out of 14 rural clinics. We took our films, and you can see them here in the background. The films were screened off pocket projectors onto a white sheet, and it's been a game changer in this program. Now it's so many more people turn up for the training. They love coming to watch the film, and the clinicians themselves, the health workers, have learnt so much also from the materials. So we've now reached 2,000 people by this method. Digital Campus is another partner that uses mobile phones, smartphones. We divided our films into small chapters, and they've been loaded onto the phones, and in this way, the reach again is massively extended. The fastest growing market for mobile telephony is in sub-Saharan Africa. There's a 44% growth year on year. It's been estimated that 9.2 billion mobile contracts will be out by 2019. 85% of these are for mobile broadband. So what does the future hold? Well, with more and more technology platforms existing to distribute high-quality content, from Twitter to Facebook, we feel that actually our distribution can only grow and grow. So in summary, filmmaking doctors can access the most rural parts of the globe to help to improve by collaboration with others, maternal and newborn survival. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I'd like to dedicate today's talk to my late husband, Philip, who passed away suddenly 10 years ago, and to our wonderful children. Many thanks.